The cage was cold, hidden deep in the mountain valley. It was made of old steel, wrapped in thick wires and glowing locks. No one came close, not even the guards. They stood far away, rifles in hand, afraid of what was inside the cage. Sat a girl. Her skin was pale, glowing faintly like moonlight. Her eyes were golden, sharp, and sad. Chains were wrapped around her arms and ankles, too tight for comfort. She didn't move, didn't speak, just sat with her head down. People from the nearby village told stories. They said she burned cities, crushed armies, and drank the blood of kings. They called her a monster, a cursed weapon from the war. Some believed she wasn't alive at all, just a machine with a girl's face. Jason didn't believe any of that. He had come from far away, looking for work. But what he found was the girl in the cage. And something about her didn't feel right. He stood near the edge of the fence, just close enough to see her clearly. The guards warned him, "Stay back, human. She's killed better men than you." But Jason ignored them. He saw her shiver in the cold. She didn't even have a blanket. Her dress was torn, her feet bare. And her eyes, they weren't filled with hate, they were filled with pain. The villagers watched from a distance. They said, "That's not a girl, that's death in a pretty face." But Jason stayed there, staring through the bars. For a long time, the girl didn't look at him. Then slowly, she lifted her head. Their eyes met. Jason didn't flinch. He didn't run. He reached into his bag and pulled out a bottle of clean water. He held it out through the bars. She looked at it with wide eyes. Her lips were dry and cracked. The guard shouted, "Don't give her anything. She doesn't need kindness." Jason still didn't move. He said gently, "If you're thirsty, take it." For a moment, she didn't react. Then slowly, she crawled forward on her knees. Chains clinked as she moved. She reached out, touched the bottle, took it carefully from his hand. She drank like someone who hadn't tasted clean water in days. Then she looked up again, confused. No one had ever helped her before. Not like this. Not with soft words and open hands. Jason sat down outside the cage. He didn't say much, just watched her. The wind blew through the trees, cold and sharp. But he didn't leave. He came back the next day, and the day after that. Always alone. Always quiet. Sometimes he brought food, other times just sat near her cage. She began to watch him too. She didn't speak, but her eyes followed him. She tilted her head when he laughed softly at his own stories. And once, she even smiled, but only a little. He learned her name from an old file he found in the town records. It was scratched and burned, but one word remained. Zira, the file said, Zira. Subject number 93, containment required. He didn't call her that out loud. He didn't want to scare her, but in his heart, the name stuck. Not monster, not weapon, just Zira. One night, the guards were gone, called away to another outpost. Jason stood alone beside her cage again. The moonlight made her skin glow like silver. He reached out and touched the metal bars. "Why are you here?" he asked softly. "Why did they fear you?" She looked at him for a long time. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "I don't remember," she whispered, "but I don't want to hurt anyone." Jason froze. Her voice didn't sound evil. It sounded tired, like someone who had carried pain for too long. "I believe you," he said, and in that moment, something changed. Her eyes weren't just gold. They were warm, alive, but far above. Something moved in the sky, a drone, silent and black. Watching, recording, the cage in the mountains wasn't just a prison. It was a secret, and now Jason was part of it. Jason didn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about the girl, the way her voice trembled, the way she said, "I don't want to hurt anyone." It didn't match what people said about her. They called her a killer, a weapon in human form. But Jason had seen something else. Not fire, not rage, just fear and sadness. The next morning, Jason walked into the village. He sat at the dusty old tavern where the miners drank. The barkeep gave him a cold look. "You were up near the cage again," he said. Jason nodded. "Yes, I was." An old man at the bar slammed down his cup. "Boy, don't be stupid," he growled. "She's not a girl, she's a bomb waiting to go off." Jason frowned. "Have you ever spoken to her?" The man laughed bitterly. "Spoken? Son, I saw what she did during the war. She walked through fire, smiling, while soldiers burned around her. They say she screamed once and a whole city fell." Another man added, "She killed hundreds in one day without touching a single weapon." Jason felt a chill, but something didn't add up. If she was that deadly, why didn't she kill him? Why did she take the water gently, like a scared animal? "I don't think she remembers any of it," Jason said quietly. "She looks broken, not dangerous." The barkeep leaned forward, his voice low. "That's what makes her worse. They say the government made her forget. So she couldn't fight back, but when she remembers, she'll burn everything." Jason left the tavern with those words echoing in his mind. But his heart told him something different. He walked back toward the mountains, slower this time, as if the world had grown heavier when he reached the cage. The sky was already turning orange. Zira sat in the same spot, but this time, her eyes were on him before he even spoke. She looked hopeful. Jason sat down near the bars. "I heard things today," he said. "They said you killed hundreds, burned cities." Zero didn't move. She looked away, her hands gripping the chains around her wrists. "Do you remember anything like that?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "I see flashes," she whispered. "Fire, screaming, lights in the sky. But I don't know if it was me or a dream." Jason felt his chest tighten. Was it possible someone had done this to her, turned her into a weapon, then locked her away and erased her memories? He looked at her carefully. Her face was young, maybe 20 at most, but her eyes were old, tired, and full of weight. "Zira," he said, "did anyone ever care for you?" She flinched. "No one," she replied. "I was raised in a cold room by machines. Men in suits came to test me, inject me, command me. No one ever touched me kindly until you." Jason swallowed hard. What kind of life was that? Built in a lab, trained like a dog, then tossed away like trash. He stood up, walked to the side of the cage. There was a hidden panel behind a broken tree. He had seen a guard use it once. Jason pressed his hand against it. A small beep, then the locks clicked softly. He didn't open the door. He just looked at her and said, "If I come back tomorrow, and this cage is open, what will you do?" Zira stood slowly, her chains dragging across the floor. She walked to the bars and faced him. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "I will not run. I will wait, because I trust you." Jason nodded once, then turned and walked away behind him. The mountains were silent, but high above. In a hidden satellite station, red lights flashed. A voice spoke through static. "Subject 93 has made vocal contact. Civilian male identified. Jason Cole, age 29, observation team. Prepare to move." Back in the village, night fell. But Jason couldn't sleep again. He kept thinking about her voice, her eyes, and the strange connection he felt. She wasn't a monster. She was something more, and maybe, just maybe, she was human after all. The next morning, the air in the mountains felt different. A strange silence covered the forest. Even the birds didn't sing. Jason climbed the hill slowly, each step heavy with doubt. He thought about what he had done the night before. He had unlocked the cage. He hadn't opened it, but still, He had given her a choice. Would she run? Would she break free and vanish like smoke? Would she become what everyone feared? But when Jason reached the cage, he stopped in his tracks. The door was still shut. Sierra was still inside. Sitting quietly, she had not left. Jason felt something move in his chest. Something warm, like trust. He stepped forward, and she looked. Up, there was no fear in her eyes today, only calm and something else, hope. "I waited," she said softly. "I know," Jason replied. He walked closer. Until he stood right at the bars. There was no guard today, no drone overhead, just the wind and the two of them. "I want to understand," Jason said. "Not the stories, not the fear. I want to know you." Zero stared at him, her golden eyes steady. Then slowly, she stood. Her chains rattled with every movement. But she didn't seem weak anymore. She seemed stronger, like she was waking up from a long sleep. Jason reached through the bars again, not with water this time, but with his hand. Her eyes widened slightly. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you touch something broken?" "You're not broken," Jason said. "You were hurt, not made evil. You're still someone." For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly, she stepped forward. She lifted her hand, bound in metal, and placed it gently into his. Her skin was cold, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt real. Jason looked down at the metal cuff on her wrist. Burned-in letters read, X93. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small tool, a tiny torch meant for machines, not people. But her cuffs weren't natural. He flicked the flame on. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Zira nodded once. The flame hissed as it touched the lock. Sparks danced. The metal softened, and then, click, the first cuff dropped from her wrist. Zira gasped, stepping back as if her arm had been freed from a lifetime of weight. She stared at it like it wasn't hers. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Jason smiled gently, because someone should have done it long ago. She held out her other hand, silent, trusting, and Jason worked again. Each click echoed like thunder in the quiet mountain air. The chains fell to the ground. One by one, when it was done, she stood without bindings for the first time. She didn't run, she didn't scream. She just stood there, breathing deeply. Jason sat down on a nearby rock, tired but calm. "You're free now," he said. "Not just because the chains are gone, but because you chose to stay." Zero looked down at her hands. They trembled. "I don't know what to do," she said. "I've never been me before." "You don't have to know," Jason said. "You just have to begin." Suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Jason stood up quickly. In the distance, a faint humming sound filled the air. Zira turned her head sharply. Her golden eyes narrowed. "They're coming," she whispered. "They know I'm free." Jason grabbed her hand. "Then we leave now." "But they'll hunt you too," she said. "I don't care," Jason replied. "You're not alone anymore." They ran through the trees. The path was rough. But Jason knew a hidden trail. Behind them, a dark shape appeared in the sky. A black drone, silent and fast. Zero looked up at it, and for a second, her body glowed faintly. Not with rage, but with power. She focused, and the drone blinked out like a candle. Jason looked at her, amazed. "You controlled it?" Zero nodded, breathing hard. "Just a little," she said. It didn't feel like burning this time. That gave Jason hope. Maybe she wasn't just a weapon. Maybe she could learn to guide the power inside her. Maybe she could choose her own path now. They disappeared into the woods, step by step, hand in hand. And high above, in a dark control room, a man in uniform stared at a black screen. "Subject has escaped," a soldier said. The man didn't blink. He just smiled coldly and said, Good. Let her think she's free. Asterisk, they didn't stop running until the sun disappeared behind the trees. Jason's legs were shaking, but he didn't complain. Not once. Zero walked beside him, silent and alert. Her eyes moved fast, watching every branch, every sound. She knew how to travel like a hunted animal, because that's what she had, always. They reached an old building hidden in the woods. It was half buried in vines and dust. A broken metal sign read, Station 47 Biotech Lab. Zero froze when she saw it. I know this place, she whispered. Jason looked at her from, Your memory? No, she said. From my dreams, the doors were rusted but unlocked inside. The air smelled like chemicals and burned wires. Lights flickered weakly overhead. Jason pulled out a flashlight and led the way. They walked down empty halls. Paint peeling, glass cracked, machines covered in dust stood like ghosts. Zira stopped in front of a sealed room. Her hand reached out, almost on its own. The door beeped and opened. Jason blinked. How did you? I don't know. She said, My body remembers. Inside, rows of black tubes lined the walls. Each one filled with dark fluid, and inside each tube was a girl. They all looked like her. Jason stared, heart pounding. What? What is this? Zero walked. Slowly, looking at each tube. Some were cracked, broken, others still working. Her voice was quiet but steady. This is where I was made. You weren't born. Jason asked. Zero touched one of the glass tubes. No, she said. I was built. Jason looked around. One of the terminals still worked, powered by a weak backup core. He wiped the dust away and tapped the screen. Files opened. Lines of code, test logs, images. He found one file marked Project X93 Core Report. He opened it, and his heart froze. Subject X93 was designed as a bioengineered control unit, capable of absorbing and redirecting energy weapons, tested under high-pressure combat simulations. Emotion suppression failed. Memory wipes incomplete. Subject shows signs of independent will. Recommendation: lockdown. Observe from distance. Terminate if awakening occurs. Jason stepped back, shaking his head. They made you too. Be a shield, a living weapon. Zero looked away. I always felt it, she said. That I wasn't real, that I was created to be used, then thrown away. Jason walked up and gently held her shoulder. You're real to me, he said. You feel? You choose. You care. No machine does that, but deep inside, Zira was breaking. Tears ran down her face as she whispered, I don't know who I am. Am I a person or just a weapon that forgot its mission? Jason hugged her tightly. You are not your past, he said. You are what you decide to become. Suddenly, alarms flashed. A low siren echoed through the lab. Motion detected someone had triggered a sensor. Jason grabbed Zara's hand. We need to go, he said. But Zira's eyes were locked on the screen. It showed a map dots blinking across the forest. Red dot soldiers closing in. They were waiting for us to come here, she whispered. This place is a trap, Jason cursed under his breath. They wanted you to remember why. Why lead us here? Zira's voice shook, to wake me up, to see if I still worked. A loud crash came from the front of the building. Jason pulled her into a side room. It was filled with broken chairs and a shattered window. We jump, he said. She nodded. They climbed out and ran behind the lab. The forest was dark now. Only the stars above guided them. Zira stopped near a broken tree. She looked at her hands, then closed her eyes. Jason watched in silence. Her body started to glow, but it wasn't wild. It wasn't fire. It was gentle, like moonlight. She opened her eyes. I can feel it now, she said. My power, it's still inside me. But I don't have to use it to hurt. Jason smiled. Then use it to survive. She nodded. Together, they moved through the shadows behind them. Soldiers entered the lab. The lead officer stared at the empty tubes. Then at the open screen, she saw the truth. He muttered. He tapped his... Come, report to command. Subject X-93 has awakened, and she's not the weapon we designed. They didn't stop running. Not after the lab, not after the alarms. Not after the first bullet hit the tree behind them. Jason and Zira moved like shadows through the night. But they were not alone anymore. Black-suited soldiers dropped from silent ships. Their armor didn't shine. Their boots didn't make noise. But their guns hummed, always ready. They're closing in, Zira said, her voice low. She wasn't guessing. She felt them, like static in her blood. Jason had a map on his old tablet. There was a canyon to the east. Beyond it, mountains too sharp for airships to follow. We make it past the ridge, he said. We disappear. But it wasn't going to be easy. Drones flew overhead, scanning with red eyes. Zira grabbed Jason and pulled him behind a fallen tree. The light passed just inches from them. Jason held his breath. Why don't you fight back? He asked her. You have power. You could stop them. Zira looked down at her hands. I can't, she said. If I use it now, the monster comes back. The one they built, not the one I choose to be. Jason nodded. He understood. This wasn't just a chase. It was her test, her choice. They kept moving through cold streams. Over slippery rocks, Jason slipped once, cutting his arm. Zira tore a piece of her shirt and wrapped it. She didn't speak, but her touch was gentle. Behind them, flashes of light rose into the sky. The soldiers were using flares now. They weren't hiding anymore. They were hurting. They want you tired, Jason said. They're pushing us into a trap. Zira stopped walking. Her eyes scanned the land. Then she pointed to a cave in the rocks. Almost hidden, we rest there, she said. For a few minutes, inside the cave, it was cold and dark. Jason sank to the ground, breathing hard. Zira sat across from him, legs crossed, eyes shut. Jason watched her quietly. She was changing, not her body, but her spirit. She looked more like a person now, less like the lost creature in a cage. I never had anyone run with me, she said suddenly. Jason looked up. What do you mean? Before, people ran from me, she said. When they saw what I was, they screamed, they hid, or they hunted. But you stayed, Jason smiled. I saw someone worth staying for. For a moment, there was peace. But only for a moment. A loud clang echoed from outside. Zira's head snapped up. They found the trail. Jason stood quickly, grabbing his small pack. He looked at her. Do we run again? Zira didn't move. No, she said. They'll never stop, not until they have me, or until I destroy them. Jason's eyes darkened. There has to be another way. Zira stepped forward, her body glowing faintly again. I think I can block their signal, she said. I felt it back at the lab. Something inside me responded. Won't that hurt you? Jason asked. She didn't answer. They moved out of the cave and into the open. A ship hovered above, shining a spotlight down there. A soldier shouted. Jason and Zira ran across the field. Bullets flew past them. Jason dove behind a large stone. Zira stood tall, her hands glowing now. Energy swirled around her fingers. She focused, eyes shut, lips moving silently, and then boom. A wave of light exploded from her chest. It wasn't fire. It wasn't heat. It was silence. The drones above shut down and fell. The guns froze in the soldiers' hands. Their radios died, their helmets sparked, everything powered. Stopped, Jason looked around, stunned. What did you do? Zira fell to her knees, breathing hard. I shut down the command link, she said. I broke the signal that controls them. The soldiers panicked. Without orders, they didn't know what to do. They backed away. Some dropped their weapons. Jason?" Ran to her. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "It hurt, but I'm fine." Suddenly, a voice echoed from a nearby speaker. It was cold, cruel, and calm. "Well done, Subject X-93, it said. "You've passed the final test, Jason." Turned, furious. "You used her again." He shouted, "You were watching the whole time." The voice laughed. "She's not your friend, human. She's the future. And now she's ready to serve." Zero stood up slowly. Her eyes were glowing again. But this time, with her own light, not the one they gave her. "No," she said. Softly, "I serve no one," and the speaker sparked. Then exploded. The battle was over. But the silence afterward felt even heavier than the fight. Jason helped Zira into a small cabin hidden deep in the forest. Old, abandoned, forgotten by time, the walls were cracked. But it had a roof, a door, and a bed. That was enough for now. She was weak, not from wounds, but from something deeper. She sat on the bed, head lowered. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from shame. Jason knelt beside her. "You saved us," he said softly. "You stopped them. You didn't hurt anyone." Zero didn't look up. "I used the power," she whispered. "I said I wouldn't." "But I did." Jason shook his head. "No, you controlled it. You made a choice. And that makes all the difference." Zero clenched her fists, but it still came from them. "From what they built inside me," Jason took her hand. "You're more than what they built. You're what you became after they stopped controlling you." She finally looked at him. Tears shone in her golden eyes. "Then tell me who I am," she said, voice shaking. "Because I don't know. I have no family, no memories, no name that belongs to me." Jason took a deep breath. "You are not a monster," he said gently. "You're not X-93. He paused, then smiled. "You're Arya." She blinked, confused. "Arya." He nodded. "It's a name from an old Earth language. It means melody." Something beautiful rising after silence. She stared at him. A tear slipped down her cheek. And for the first time, she smiled not faintly, not sadly, but with light in her eyes. "Arya," she whispered. It felt warm on her tongue, like something she'd been missing for years. That night, Jason cooked what little food they had. They ate in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. For the first time, Arya didn't feel like she had to hide. She stretched her fingers, watched them glow slightly, then dim. It was no longer wild, no longer painful. It felt like something inside her was healing. Later, she found a mirror in the corner of the cabin. It was cracked and dirty, but she saw herself, not a weapon, not a project, just a girl. Jason leaned against the door, watching her quietly. "You look human," he said with a smile. "I feel human," she replied. "But I'm still afraid." "Of what?" he asked. "That I'll lose control again." She said, "That the next time I will become what they made." Jason stepped closer. He gently touched her cheek. "You know what monsters never do." She shook her head. "They never care," he said. "They don't feel guilt. They don't ask questions. They don't sit awake worrying if they might hurt someone. You're not a monster, Arya." She leaned into his hand for a moment. The world outside didn't exist. No drones, no soldiers, no labs. Just quiet and safety. And a name she could finally call her own. But even peace has shadows. That night, while Jason slept, Arya stood outside the cabin. The moonlight touched her skin, and deep inside, something stirred. Not fear, not hate, but memory. She saw flashes, cold rooms, needles, metal voices, commands like knives. Activate, eliminate, obey. She dropped to her knees, holding her head. "I'm not that girl," she whispered. I'm not. Jason rushed outside, hearing her cry. He wrapped his arms around her. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." "There." "Still in me," she gasped. "I can feel their voices buried deep. What if I can't silence them forever?" Jason looked into her glowing eyes. "You don't have to fight this alone anymore. We'll face it together." She looked up at him. The fear in her chest still burned. But it burned less, because he was there, in the distance, hidden. Far away in the shadows of the city, the man who spoke through the drone stood before a large screen. Arya's glowing image played over and over. He turned to his officers. "She's gaining control," he said. "She's changing. Should we move to capture?" An officer asked. The man shook his head. "No," he said. "Let her believe. She's free when the time is right. She come to us." Back in the cabin, Jason sat beside Arya. She leaned her head on his shoulder. And for the first time since she'd opened her eyes in that cage, she slept. Morning came slowly. Golden light slipped through the cracks in the wooden cabin walls. Jason was already awake, boiling water, checking supplies, but Arya sat at the edge of the bed, still and quiet. She had dreamed again. This time, not of cages or fire, but of her and Jason standing in a place filled with light. No chains, no soldiers, only peace. But peace never lasts long when the world fears you. Suddenly, the ground shook. A low hum echoed through the forest. Jason rushed to the door. A black airship was lowering behind the trees, big, armored, and covered in weapon turrets. Arya stood up slowly, her eyes locked on the ship. "They found us," she said. Jason grabbed his pack. "We run again." But Arya didn't move. "No." She said quietly, "They'll never stop. Not unless I end it here." Jason looked at her with fear in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "I have to face them," she said. "Not as a weapon, not as X-93, but as Arya." Jason stepped forward. "There has to be another way." Arya shook her head. "I'm done hiding." Outside, soldiers formed a circle around the cabin. One man stepped forward. He didn't wear a helmet. His face was sharp, his voice familiar. The same voice from the drone, the one who had always watched her. "Arya," he said through a loudspeaker. "This is your final warning. Surrender, or your friend dies." Jason's eyes widened. "He knows my name. They've known everything." Arya said, "They were always watching." Jason looked at her. "Then why let us run?" Arya turned her head slowly, "Because they wanted me to care. Because they knew. The more human I became, the more they could hurt me." Outside, weapons clicked, powered up. Arya took a deep breath, then stepped outside. Alone, Jason tried to follow. But she raised her hand. "Stay," she said gently. "I have to do this." She walked barefoot across the dirt, her long white hair moving in the wind. Her arms at her sides, no glowing hands, no weapons, just her. The officer smiled. Coldly, "You've come a long way," he said. "Too bad it ends here." Arya looked at him. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." He raised his hand. A soldier grabbed Jason from the cabin and dragged him forward. A gun pressed to his back. "Then let's test that," the officer said. "Surrender your power, or he dies." Jason struggled. "Don't do it," he yelled. "Don't give them what they want." But Arya stepped forward. She dropped to her knees, head bowed, arms open. "I surrender," she said softly. The officer grinned. "Good girl." But something was wrong. The moment the soldiers moved to cuff her, a pulse of light burst from the ground beneath her, not violent, not loud, but pure and bright and warm. The soldiers stumbled back. Jason felt the energy pass through him like a soft breeze. Arya stood up slowly, her eyes glowing not with rage, but with purpose. "I am not your tool," she said. "I am not your creation. I am not your prisoner. I am Arya." She raised her hand, but this time the light didn't burn. It spread like a wave, machines shut down, guns melted into dust, airship engines coughed and died. The soldiers froze, their suits sparking. One by one, they dropped there. Weapons and ran, only the officer remained. He stared at her in disbelief. "You were never meant to disobey," he growled. "You were made to follow." Arya stepped closer. "I wasn't made to follow," Shay said. "I was made to rise." He tried to raise a weapon, but it cracked in his hand. And then he ran too. Silence filled the forest again. Jason rushed to her. She looked tired, but not broken. He held her tightly. "You didn't kill them," he whispered. "You chose not to." Arya nodded slowly. "I had the power. But I used it my way." Later, they buried the chains in the woods. All of them, no more numbers, no more metal, no more past. Arya stood beside Jason, the wind blowing softly. She looked up at the sky. "I'm free now," she said. Jason smiled. "Yes," he said, "and you're not alone." They walked into the sunrise together. Not as weapon and rescuer, not as monster and man, but as two souls who had chosen each other. The world had feared her, but she had chosen to protect it. And in doing so, she became more than anyone believed possible. She became human.